All right, let's jump right into what might be one of the most mind-bending ideas in all of biology. And to get there, we're going to start with a pretty strange question.
I mean, seriously. To a fly, it smells great, right? They're drawn to it because it's basically a buffet for them. But for us humans, totally different story. See, poop is also loaded with bacteria that can make us incredibly sick, even kill us. So the reason it smells so awful to us, well, that comes down to evolution.
You know, this really gets to the heart of survival of the fittest. But that famous phrase begs a really big question. Survival of the fittest, what exactly? Now, most of us would probably say, well, the individual, of course. An animal that's faster, stronger, better adapted, it survives and passes on its genes. And if that's true, it means every individual should be fundamentally selfish. But if that's the whole story,
Yeah, how do you possibly explain selfless acts? Because when you actually look out at the natural world, you see it everywhere. It's absolutely packed with examples of altruism.
Think about it. A worker bee will sting an intruder to protect the hive, and that act of stinging kills it. You've got sterile worker ants that spend their entire lives serving the colony without ever getting to reproduce themselves, or squirrels that scream out a warning call when a hawk is nearby, basically painting a giant target on their own back. None of these actions make any sense if it's all about the individual's survival. So, what is going on here?
this right here, this contradiction, is one of the biggest puzzles in evolutionary biology. Now, you might be thinking, aha, it's not about the individual, it's about the survival of the species. And that sounds good, but it doesn't really hold up under scrutiny either.
See, for natural selection to work, you need replication. You need things making copies of themselves. And then some of those copies do better than others. Individuals do that, sure, but as we just saw, that doesn't explain altruism. But groups, species, they don't really make copies of themselves. You know, you don't get one herd of zebras creating a duplicate herd of zebras to compete with. It's just not a stable unit that natural selection can really act on. So, if it isn't the individual and it isn't the group, what's left? To find the real answer, we have to go on a little journey. I'm talking way, way back, to the very dawn of life on Earth.
So let's just picture it. Billions of years ago, the primordial soup. It's not really a soup, it's just this vast space filled with simple little chemical compounds, with energy sources like sunlight and lightning zapping through it. Nothing is alive. Not yet.
In this world, there's a very simple rule. Stable things stick around, and unstable things fall apart. Over millions and millions of years, energy zaps these simple chemicals, forcing them into new combinations. Most of them are duds, but just by pure chance, some form more complex, more stable shapes. And eventually, something incredible happens. A molecule forms that is so uniquely stable, it has the accidental ability to attract other chemical building blocks and assemble them into a perfect copy of itself. The very first replicator is born. And then comes a crucial mistake. The copies aren't always perfect. Mutation has just entered the game.
So now, suddenly, you've got different kinds of replicators. And they all need the exact same raw materials, the same building blocks to make more copies of themselves. This peaceful soup has just turned into a battlefield. Now, it's not a conscious battle, of course, it's just pure chemistry. But any replicator that happens to be a little more stable, or copies itself a little bit faster, or makes fewer mistakes, well, it's naturally going to start outnumbering the others. An ancient war for resources had officially begun.
And here's the part that should absolutely blow your mind. That ancient battle, it never stopped. It just got way, way more complicated. The replicators started evolving new strategies.
Again, purely by chance, a mutation might cause a replicator to build a simple chemical wall around itself. And wow, what an advantage. This little barrier could protect it from getting destroyed by rivals that had, by this point, evolved ways to break other replicators apart.
Now, this didn't happen in a weekend. We're talking about billions of years of trial and error. These simple protective walls got more and more sophisticated. The replicators stumbled upon ways to move around, to sense light and dark, to store energy for later.
Until today. Those simple barriers have become the huge, incredibly complex things we call plants, animals, and us. We are survival machines, and you have to understand from this point of view, our bodies, our entire existence was built for one purpose and one purpose only, to protect and make copies of the ancient replicators living inside of us.
The biologist Richard Dawkins put this radical idea into words that you just can't forget. He said that we aren't the main characters in this story. We are the vehicles, robot vehicles blindly programmed by and for our genes.
And that's the whole point. The modern name for those ancient replicators is the gene. The gene is the true fundamental unit of natural selection. Think about it. It's immortal in a way that bodies aren't. It's copied, almost perfectly, from generation to generation. And it influences the traits of the body it's in, all to improve its own chances of getting copied again.
So let's bring it all back home. With this new gene's eye view of the world, can we finally solve that puzzle of altruism we started with? Why would any animal sacrifice itself for another?
Well, because it's never been about the animal's survival. It's always been about the gene's survival. And it all boils down to who you related to. You share, on average, half of your genes with a brother or sister, about a quarter of your genes with a grandparent or an aunt. It goes on and on.
And this leads to an amazing idea called kin selection. Okay, look at it from the perspective of a single gene. Let's say a gene that causes a squirrel to give that dangerous alarm call. Now, that squirrel might get eaten, sure. But if that warning call saves, say, 3 of its siblings from being eaten, each of whom has a 50% chance of carrying that exact same altruism gene, well, from the gene's point of view, that's a fantastic trade. 1 copy dies, but 1.5 copies survive. The gene doesn't care which body, which survival machine it's sitting in, as long as copies of itself make it to the next generation.
Now, this idea, which got famously nicknamed the selfish gene, is unbelievably powerful. But it's also really controversial. It is not the complete and total story, and it's super important we look at the criticisms.
First off, there's genetic drift. Sometimes genes spread through a population not because they're better, but just because of random luck. Second, that word selfish, it's just a metaphor. A gene isn't actually selfish. It doesn't have feelings or a plan. It's just a molecule, subject to chemistry. And finally, biology is messy. It's almost never as simple as one gene controls one trait. It's this vast, tangled web of interactions.
But even with those caveats, even as a simplification, looking at the world from the gene's perspective is an incredibly powerful tool. It helps us understand the why behind so many behaviors we see in nature, from the most ruthless competition to the most incredible acts of self-sacrifice. It really gives us a look at the engine of evolution itself.
Which, of course, leaves us with one last, very unsettling question. If this view is even partly true, what does that mean for us? For our ideas of free will, our sense of self? Are we really the ones in charge? Or are we, at the end of the day, just survival machines? Just flesh robots, blindly carrying out the ancient programming of replicators that started their journey 4 billion years ago? It's a question that is as profound as it is controversial.